I'm honored to be back at D.I.C.E. to introduce an exciting new segment of content for this year's summit. Voices of the Story Ahead is a series of sessions spotlighting 4 developers who are shaping the future of our medium. The speakers you are about to meet will share personal insights, creative breakthroughs, and fresh perspectives on how they are approaching narrative and play. The people you are about to meet and hear from have each discovered how to capture the zeitgeist in different and enthralling ways. Breaths of fresh air that have challenged conventions, not just raised the bar, but changed what the bar even is. So the aim of these sessions is to highlight these developers who have caught the attention of the Academy and who we hope and expect to see great things from in the future. Let us listen to their perspectives. They can offer us today, we can watch their trajectories into the future and invite them to join us as our future leaders in this medium. To begin, let's talk about Clair Obscure, Expedition 33. The game is loved for good reason. Clair Obscure Expedition 33 is nominated for 8 of the awards that we'll have on Thursday from the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. One of the well-deserved nominations is for Outstanding Achievement in Story. Jennifer Svedberg-Yen, lead writer and voice and localization producer at Sandfall Interactive, has focused on storytelling that has moved audiences and earned the focus and attention of our industry. What she and the team she is a part of have achieved is no simple task. We know this. Jennifer is an incredible talent, and I am eager to hear what she has to share with us today and what she will be a part of in the future. So please join me as we show our admiration and respect and welcome to the stage Jennifer Svedberg-Yen.
Hi. Hello. Nice to meet you. Hello, everyone. Pardon me, I'm going to park myself over here. Got a bad back. It's one of the hazards, I think, of being a writer. You're hunched over on your desk all the time. So I'll talk to you guys from here. But hi, everyone. Nice to see everybody. Hello. My name is Jennifer Svedberg-Yen. I am the lead writer and the voice and localization producer for Clair Obscure Expedition 33. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, D.I.C.E., for inviting me to come share some of my thoughts on creativity. Now, all great presentations need a punny title, so I've decided to call mine Expedition 3x3. And that is 3 core elements of being a creative, in this case, a storyteller, and 3 key skills that support them. It's a simple framework. There are obviously many other ways to think about this, but I find this useful as a starting point. So, what does it mean to be a creative? For me, it's 3 things. It's taste, execution, and having something to say. So these are all obviously nonlinear, right? There's many facets to them. It's not a simple slider from good to bad. It's subjective, but they do evolve and deepen. So first, taste. Taste to me is the quality of work that you want to achieve. It's what you admire, what you desire even. It's the destination, if you will. I sort of think of it as the mental vista, what you see in front of you, where you're trying to go. Execution is how close you can get to that. And I think one of the hardest things about learning as an adult is our own inner critic, because our taste evolves faster than our execution, right? When we're kids, we're not as aware, we're focused more on what we're doing, our taste and our execution, they evolve together, right? But as adults though, oh man, our taste evolves faster than our execution. And it can be so demoralizing when you can envision something beautiful, but what you create is not quite there. And you can see what's wrong with it. You can see how it deviates from your vision, from your taste, but you don't know how to make it right yet. So as an adult, we need to remind ourselves that this is a journey we all take, right? Step by step. You gotta suck first before you can get better, yeah? That's part of the process. That's growth. But you can only get there if you don't stop. The VC world likes to say, fail better, fail faster, right? Failure is not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be embraced. It's a necessary part of the process, and it gives you valuable information. And the analogy I personally like to use is the first pancake. We've all made pancakes before, right? Or at least eaten them, yeah. The first pancake is the sacrificial pancake. It's usually misshapen, slightly burnt, but you can't get to the second really nice pancake without going through that first sacrificial pancake. So I like to tell people, embrace your first pancake, as it's part of the process. Yeah. And also there are some instances where you can actually have the opposite, where your execution grows faster than your taste. In fact, there's a whole subreddit dedicated to this. It's called ATBGE, awful taste, but great execution. I recommend you check it out sometime. It's interesting. So that's taste and execution. The third is having something to say. The stories that I am personally drawn to are the ones that make you think and make you feel, that have a personality, a point of view, right? And I contrast these with stories that are primarily a sequence of cool events with some characters along for the ride. Now, don't get me wrong, I love those stories too. They're really fun. But the stories that I'm talking about are the ones that have a soul to them, that have something meaningful to say. And that comes from the writer. That comes from you, right? And that's something that's uniquely yours. People can copy your taste. People can emulate your execution. And by people, I mean AI. But nobody can copy your individual life experiences and what you want to say through your work, your specific point of view. Because everyone's perspective is colored by the life that they lead, right? Everyone's perspective is constantly evolving. And there might be similarities and even complementarities. But nobody else in this universe thinks about things in the exact same way that you do. And nobody has the exact same thing that they want to say in the exact same manner that you do, right? So those are, to me, the three elements of being a creative. This next part is a bit more specific to storytelling, but I do think that it broadly applies to other mediums as well. I am a firm believer in lifelong learning. I'm also a type A perfectionist. So my question is always, how do I get better, right? How do I improve my taste, execution, what I want to say? And there are obviously multiple elements to this, right? A key one I like to emphasize is that the richer your life is outside of writing, the richer your writing will be. And obviously, there's a wonderful work-life balance aspect to this. But more than that, everything, literally everything in your life is fertile soil in which to plant your ideas. And you can make your characters, your story, your world feel more grounded and real, even in the most fantastical of situations, by drawing on something real, something that you have experienced or observed or understand deeply. And that's where the three skills come in. So for me, those are curiosity, empathy, and logic. And these are not just feel-good soft skills or buzzwords. My personal opinion is that good storytelling requires all three. Curiosity. It's important to cultivate your curiosity. It's about asking questions. It's about peeling the onion, exploring, trying new things, and always learning, right? Always asking why things are the way they are, and why not some other way? It means looking at the world around you with an active eye and engaging with it. Curiosity drives us forward into the world. Curiosity deepens our understanding. And everything around us is actually a potential element for story. Empathy. Empathy is applying that curiosity to the people around us and to ourselves, and really walking in their shoes, right? Why do people feel the way that they do? Why do they do the things that they do? Why do they see the world in their specific way? I like to say that we are all main characters in our own story, but I will bet that at some point in our life, each and every one of us were the bad guys in somebody else's story, right? Are we able to really understand and empathize, sympathize with that? And this is, to me, a critical part of writing three-dimensional characters. Like, when I write someone's point of view, I am fully their advocate, even if they're the bad guy, Right? I'm not just a puppet master trying to make the characters do the things I want them to do to fill out the plot that I want them to play out. I am instead role-playing each one, right? And to do that, you must empathize and advocate for them. The tone will change depending on the genre you're in, but the portrayal will always be something of substance. Because from the outside, a character's actions might seem strange to, or wrong to us, to the other characters. But it should always make emotional and intellectual sense to the character. And for that, you really need empathy. And all of that brings us to logic. Drilling down on logic, to me, is actually an underrated aspect of storytelling. Obviously, with fiction, we have suspension of disbelief, but that is a handshake agreement that we make with the audience. And there are parameters to this. It's not a blank check, right? There must still be an internal logic to what we create. One of my pet peeves are characters who stop existing when they're not actually in a scene, right? They just go dormant. They're not advancing their own agenda when they're off screen. It's like they just stop, right? Another pet peeve are characters who do certain things, right? Or say certain things because the plot needs them to do it. Not because it makes sense to them, not because it's what they want to do, not because it's within their motivation or their characterization, right? Or characters who drop a ton of exposition that a real person would never say in that situation or feel the need to say, right? And all of that comes back to logic. The more you can adhere to an internal logic, the tighter the story will be, and the more immersive it will feel. I think the South Park guys actually said it best. A story is not, this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. That's boring. That's not a real story. It's, in fact, this happens, therefore this happens. But then this happens, and therefore that happens, right? It's cause and effect. And you can apply that further to characters, right? We put them in a particular situation, right? It's not just these two characters interacting as who they are. You want to know, how does this change them? How does this change their actions? How does this change their emotions, their perspectives? We put them in with a particular person. How do they react to each other? Another one of my pet peeves are characters who talk at each other rather than with each other, right? Unless that's the point of the scene. But yeah, if we put characters together, how do they change each other? So I think if we can apply these three skills, how does this make you think, feel, and see the world, and why? And all of this will, in turn, lend more humanity to our writing. It can help us break out of patterns and ruts. And I tell people to use all of this in your writing. And your worlds will feel fuller, your characters will feel more evocative, your stories will feel more meaningful, and your writing will feel more grounded and real. Even in the most fantastical of settings, even with characters who are vastly different from yourself, because it's drawing from something that is real, right? It's something that you've personally experienced or observed in others, and it will have a tangible point of view. And most of all, the message I would like to leave everybody with is have empathy and kindness for yourself, because we can really be our own harshest critic. And we need a little bit of kindness to keep us going in pursuit of our craft. Because again, our taste often improves faster than our execution. And the key is to not be discouraged. So there you have it. Cultivate your non-writing life. Practice curiosity, empathy, logic. Use this to develop your taste, execution, and point of view. And lastly, be kind and don't stop. Thank you.
Pretty great. That first pancake thing, I'm gonna steal that. Thank you. I now want to introduce all of you to a true creative. Johnny Galvatron is creative director at Beethoven and Dinosaur and has simply been a rock star. He's made short films, written novels. He's taken bits of all of that and put them into video games. With The Artful Escape and Mixtape, which is coming soon, he evokes a feeling of nostalgia that you don't often feel when you're playing games. Johnny's work feels like comfort and home, and I think that's a big reason why his work has managed to break through and touch people in new and impactful ways. Artful Escape earned at least a dozen nominations across different award shows, including a nomination for Outstanding Achievement in Game Direction here at the Academy. Mixtape, coming later this year, is already on my wish list, and I am eager for this peek into its creative director's mind. Let us welcome to the stage Johnny Galvatron.
All right, simmer down. Hey, I'm Johnny Galvatron. I'm from Beethoven to Dinosaur, director of The Artful Escape and the upcoming Mixtape. It's great to be here today. Now, I love telling stories and I love making video games, but first, I want to set a serious tone. Because it's a serious talk. Some would even say heinous. I'm just kidding, the talk's nothing like that. I'm absolute candy floss. It's more sort of it's a bit kind of like this, you know what I mean? Kind of this thing. The problem with traditional character arcs in games and how to kill a man in one punch. Today I want to talk about character arcs, what they are, how they're used in film, what makes them difficult to incorporate into interactive media. And there are many character arcs. There's a million combinations, both brilliant and tragic. But there are three kind of main arcs. There's a positive change arc, and this is Lady Bird maturing from rebellious teen to self-aware young woman, appreciating her roots, or Max Fisher from Rushmore, stepping into adulthood and learning humility. Apollo Creed goes from cocky champion to wise mentor and friend of Rocky. There's also a flat arc with my boy Paddington. This is where the protagonist goes through no distinctive shift and the characters around them change. Think Ferris Bueller and his best friend Cameron, Paddington Bear, Ripley in Aliens, or Mad Max and the characters he begrudgingly helps in The Wasteland. There is just one arc I'll mention briefly. Richard Dreyfuss's character in Close Encounters of the Third Kind is like this amazing film about contacting aliens, and Richard Dreyfuss is fucking around with mashed potatoes for half the film, and then meanwhile Steven Spielberg casts the legendary French New Wave director Francois Truffaut as the smartest man in the world. And he's going around checking spaceships, and he's doing all this rad stuff. Meanwhile, Richard Dreyfuss is so boring, his family moves out, and there's this motherfucker jamming on an ARP 2600 with the alien mothership. We never learn about that character. He just rocks up, and then he's playing the synth, and then right at the end, the guy who plays the synth is just the guy who rocked up to set it up, and then Richard Dreyfuss is just in a onesie at the end, and he rocks up, and he fucks off with his whole family. He gets in a spaceship, he leaves them. Was I supposed to like this character? Anyway, it's one of my favorite films. All right, sit down. Negative change arc. All right, so this is Travis Bickle becoming the ooze that flows through the streets of New York City in Taxi Driver, or Nina Sayers descending into obsession to become the Black Swan, or how Anthony Cutlass passes the baton in The Four Tempests, which is a film I just made up. The positive arc is by far the most common in popular culture. It runs like this. The character has a problem. The character realizes they have a problem but are unable to overcome it in their current state. And then the character makes a great change in order to overcome the problem. Now, I have a treat for you here. Let's watch an example of a character arc from the 1922 Soviet masterpiece, Frozh. It's in Russian, so I'll translate it, but probably not like in a Russian accent. I'll just do like an American one. Frozh! Vodka. I love it. When I have to choose between vodka and Passiona, I choose vodka. But then I met Tina. And I fell in love with Tina. But I'm a huge piece of shit. And I need to make a change and choose Passiona. Through the pursuit of love, I have grown, and now Tina loves me. This segment brought to you by Passiona. Remember Passiona, guys? You don't have Passiona, do you? Doesn't matter. Thanks a lot. That's what a character arc is. Appreciate it. When we watch a film, we are passive observers. We cannot interrupt or influence. We are forced to endure the suffering of the characters, to see them hit rock bottom, and sometimes what it takes for them to drag themselves out of despair. We cannot interactive with a film. But as a game, anyone? You can interactive. Is that going to be a problem? Yes. What is the problem? The problem is always the same. It's the player. But who is the player? Do they want to be evil? Do they like feet? Do they like deck builders? This is a really good Australian joke, by the way. Ow! Hey! Come on, please. Thank you. No, please don't encourage me. Do they want to be tortured? Are they deliberately playing my game wrong to antagonize me? Do they like opening batter Aaron Finch? No. No one likes cricket. This is a graph of everyone who likes cricket in the game industry. That's me and my friend Woody, and I hired Woody because he likes cricket. And then this is everyone else, including the people who make the cricket game. Let me tell you about who the player is. The player is someone who arrives in the world not to observe, but to alter and to influence. And when they arrive, they are sure in the superiority of their moral compass. Whole, well-adjusted people that would rule with a velvet glove if given the opportunity. They're good people. Also, they're imbued with a certain detachment from the world and from the character. And for many of us, there's a cultural literacy that allows us to see the repeating patterns in stories. The same weight of death may not apply to a player in a game. In a novel, a character is at the whims of the author. They could die forever, whereas a protagonist of a game will almost certainly succeed. The player, unlike the character, comes into the story with no flaws, no doubt, and they are fully confident in their moral hierarchy and their ability to change the world. Now, I want to briefly divert into the morality of players. 3%. That's how many players do evil runs the first time they play a game. This data comes from Obsidian. There are some other surveys and a few bits of data out there. But it generally sits at around 3 to 5%, head out into the world to do evil. Players want positive outcomes from the world, and they want positive outcomes from their avatar. Here's where the player and the character arc clash. As soon as the player sees there is something wrong with the world, they will attempt to correct it. And this includes the flaws of the protagonist. You see, excuse me. You see, in Froge, it's a film. So the Passiona is grayed out. But in a game, anyone? You can select the Passiona. What is a struggle for the character is a simple binary decision for the player. Now it's time for the Passiona quote of the day. The traditional positive change arc is problematic when the player has agency. Players negate a character's flaws. They'll just instantly, through no growth or catharsis or dramatic revelation, fix the character. And if they're not allowed to fix the character, if they're forced to experience tragedy that they cannot change, that can be even worse. Let me tell you about, hey, Forrest Gump's here. Let me tell you about flat art characters. Flat art character mirrors the player in many ways. They're steadfast and sure in their ability to change the world, or at least resistant to its corruption. The flat art character begins the story already in possession of a truth, a philosophy, and a conviction or an outlook that is complete and doesn't fundamentally change. Unlike a positive or a negative change arc, their personal transformation isn't the engine of the story. Instead, the story tests whether the truth can stand against pressure and if their truth can inspire change in others, both good and bad. Their way of life is disruptive. It sparks growth, conflict, collapse in the characters they encounter and the worlds and the factions. Think Ferris Bueller transforming his best friend Cameron, instigating a series of events that lead Cameron to kicking his father's Ferrari out a window. Of course, there's no lack of stoic flat art characters in video games. It's just that all the characters around them kind of suck and they suck, and it all sucks. But here's some genres of flat art characters that I would like to shop to you. Hey, it's Forrest. Ankus. The role is to resist change and provide moral, spiritual, ideological stability while the other characters shift around them. You think like Morpheus, Yoda, Forrest Gump, hey. And these are characters that have a rock-solid moral core. Forrest Gump is like really interesting, actually, because Forrest Gump stays the same, but America changes around Forrest. Remember Forrest Gump? Remember Lieutenant Dan? Remember problematic Jenny? Made a few weird decisions, Jenny. This is catalysts. They move through the story like a spark, igniting transformation. They're chaotic tricksters that push others. This is Ferris, Amelie, Wonka. Actually, Wonka's a great example of, Wonka's a great example of a flat art character. He's mysterious, enigmatic, and he brings out the absolute worst in a group of children. And then he gives his empire to a boy who, like him, doesn't change. It's this cool kind of like, revolutionize the world, but never change. And it's a cool message. And he's like, chaos, motherfucker, you get nothing. Change my mind, you get everything. My only certainty is mayhem. Lick the walls, you fucking pigs. Legend. Then there's observers. They stay flat, but they're positioned to witness and reflect the change in others. You think of like Nick Carraway as he shadows Jay Gatsby, or Mad Max in The Wasteland. Hey, interesting fact about Mad Max. Did you know it was directed by Goo Gooman from Death Stranding 2? That joke is niche. Love a Kojima game. Have you met Kojima? I have. He played mixtape. He gave me 2 thumbs up. I'll actually tell you about it. He's behind the curtain. I took a photo. That's the back. That's the back of Kojima. There's Phil up there. But then Phil saw I was taking the photo, and I was immediately killed. Thank you. Phil's a dude, by the way. Speaking of, let's talk about the dude. He's an interesting character because he's a combination of all 3 categories. The dude doesn't grow. He doesn't fall. He doesn't really learn in any traditional sense. The dude abides. He's often seen as a flat arc. He starts with a worldview, take it easy, man, and he never abandons it. In this sense, he's an anchor-type flat arc character that embodies the truth that holds in the middle of chaos. But he's also an observer. He drifts through the narrative almost passively, more as a lens on the madness than an instigator. We experience the story largely through his eyes, but he's not reshaping people the way Ferris Bueller would. Because he's so passive, some argue that he has no real arc, that he's a hangout character in a hangout movie, or a non-character. This isn't wrong, but it overlaps with the flat arc character. He's a fantastic character, he's memorable, he's loved, and he has no real character development. Flat arcs are uniquely suited for games. Players already drive the action, so a strong worldview character frames the experience without constantly needing personal reinvention. It's about watching how their worldviews collide with new challenges and reshapes the people around them. Do you remember the story in The Witcher? I don't, but do you remember the little demon baby and the king? That shit was visceral. I actually love The Witcher. I'm not making fun of The Witcher. But I also love cricket. This is when some bees attacked a cricket match. This isn't part of the talk. I'm just love cricket. Don't confuse the flat art character with a blank canvas character or a voiceless avatar. I just ruined the whole talk with that slide. They're not vessels waiting to be filled. It's the opposite. A good flat art character is the master of their universe. They are calm, they're certain. Their point isn't that they lack definition. It's that their definition resists change. Their existence is a form of rebellion, often, and that rebellion creates drama in the characters swept into their orbit. So, when making your protagonist, please consider the flat arc character. Or don't, whatever, I don't care. But what's important is that we leave here today thinking about how few players want to be evil and celebrate the natural instinct in humanity to do good.
Johnny Galvatron.
Who is this?
I am AI, Johnny Galvatron. You don't need to write stories anymore. We'll take it from here.
But I like writing stories.
No, that's okay. We'll do it.
What am I supposed to do?
Just die, I guess. Would you like me to pick a song for you to die to?
Yeah?
Oh, how about Carry On Wayward Son by Kansas?
Thanks a lot. I'm Johnny Galvatron. Tip your waitress. All right, thanks a lot.
Let's see AI try to make Johnny. We're gonna be fine, you guys. Jenny Jiao Hsia, co-director on Consume Me, spent 10 years of her life making this one game. She poured her soul into the semi-autobiographical story about the pains of being a teenage girl. Consume Me has already earned multiple awards in our industry and 2 nominations at our ceremony on Thursday. Consume Me is a game that genuinely spoke to an audience that doesn't always feel heard. And her customers, she's a voice of a generation that is afraid to speak. And I can't wait to listen to what she says next. So please help me warmly welcome to the D.I.C.E stage, Jenny Jiao Hsia.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Jiao Hsia. You may know me as Q-Dork on social media, and I'm here in Las Vegas this week to eat 2 Gordon Ramsay beef Wellingtons back to back. Though I figured while I was in town, I might as well stop by D.I.C.E and talk about my deepest professional insecurities for 15 minutes. And then tomorrow night, possibly win an award. I made an autobiographical narrative role-playing game called Consume Me. And that's a fancy way of saying I made a game about feeling stupid, fat, and ugly in high school. I spent about 2.5 high school careers worth of time working on Consume Me. I basically earned a PhD in making one video game. Yep, I sure learned a lot of technical skills along the way, though don't worry about that. Today, I'm mostly here to dazzle you with tales of my discipline, my endurance, my tendency to overthink and waste time and underpay myself, and the objective fact that I am literally the creative director of an award-winning video game. Consume Me received widespread critical acclaim. It was great. A guy who works at NPR recognized me in the street once. Unfortunately, my bank did not read the New York Times feature about my game. The joke's on my bank account, though. That Gordon Ramsay beef Wellington here in Las Vegas costs $73.95, and that's the cost of like half an hour's rent in Manhattan. If someone else out there yearns to follow in my footsteps and make an award-winning indie narrative game the hard way, please, before you do that, heed my words. Let me offer you some lessons I learned. Let me tell you about what I'll do differently when I make my next video game. Together, we can all be eating 3 beef Wellingtons each in the bright future. I started Consume Me in 2016. That's not 10 years ago. Your math is wrong. I was a student in Bennett Foddy's prototyping class at NYU, and in this class, students make a new game every week. Basically, the teacher says, here's the theme, you have 1 week, good luck, and then makes his own game about climbing a mountain very badly. A bunch of the many prototypes I made in that class became the mini games in Consume Me. In 2018, some GIFs of mine went semi-viral. And that's good, by the way. My game got featured at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and that's the world's leading museum of art, design, and performance. Of course, classy folks like yourselves all definitely already knew that. My collaborator, A.P. Thompson, helped me build a vertical slice, a version of the game we use to pitch to potential investors and publishers at the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco that year. In 2019, we signed with Kowloon Knights and got about $300,000. This was certainly exactly enough money for us to finish the game in maybe 2 years. Unfortunately, it would wind up taking 6. In 2020, I moved into my late grandma's tiny apartment to keep costs down. I still live there now. It had a mold problem, and it still does today. In 2022, we hired 3 more collaborators, Kelly on art, Violet on sound design, and Coda on music. We released Consume Me in September 2025. For most of development, we paid ourselves around $2,000 a month. So if you're wondering how indie games are made, it's not blood, sweat, and tears. It's more like blood, sweat, tears, and genuine shock that my apartment somehow doesn't also have bed bugs. Lesson number 1. Consume Me started as a collection of mini-games, and that's great in the beginning. Making small things quickly feels like making progress. Prototypes are screenshotable and GIFable. Showing off your work feels great. However, prototypes are not a game. They're a trap. When you post a GIF of a prototype on social media, people tell you, I'd play this game. And then 10 years later, they don't. Buddy, let me tell you, if even half of the people who retweeted my GIFs had bought my game, I'd be staying in this hotel tonight. A viral video clip of a cute moment in a video game prototype can get you rich quick in the social currency of likes and retweets. Though that's only 2% of the work. The other 98% is figuring out how those crucial moments fit coherently into something bigger. AP always says, we tried a lot of ideas and a lot of different combinations, but the game didn't click until we had a critical mass of systems in place, which is a fancy way of saying we had to build a whole lot of the game before we could even tell we were making a game. And if I could do it again, I'd spend less time making mini-games and more time answering the real questions, like how does the story flow and how do we actually make it fun? I learned this slowly because I kept getting distracted by college. AP and I call this the dangly arm situation. Once I spent an entire week getting a literal dangly arm to work, the physics, joints, the whole thing, and I was really proud of it. And then AP comes over, watches it for about 5 seconds and goes, Jenny, this is literally in the game for 2 seconds. When I reflect on this, I realize if you don't train yourself to see the bigger picture, you will fall into the Zeno's paradox of game development, where every improvement you make gets smaller and smaller, and before you know it, 5 years go by, and it's 2025, and the single-pane glass windows in your late grandmother's apartment offer 0 protection from harmful UV rays. Lesson number 2. I thought making my dream game would feel like a dream job, and it did feel like a dream job. On the other hand, it turns out that dream jobs are just a type of job. Even if I ever get access to a time machine, I'm gonna go back in time and tell my younger self to consider dreaming about big, pillowy piles of cash. My dream job happens to be a job where you have to actually show up, even when you don't feel inspired, even when it's boring, even when you can't breathe because you just cooked breakfast, your kitchen has no exhaust fan, and your living room windows don't open. Every morning when I opened Unity and saw that friendly ghosts hadn't finished my game for me overnight, I remember this quote by Ben Esposito, and it goes something like this. Nobody told me when you make a video game, you have to make the whole thing. We started working on Consume Me full time. And I had just recently, when we had started working on Consumi full-time. I had just recently graduated college, and I basically had no studio experience. So I had to learn stuff that seems super obvious now, like tracking hours, planning sprints, finishing tasks. And here's my honest takeaway. Discipline does not kill or even harm creativity. Discipline turns creativity into a finished game. Lesson number 3. Small teams are actually great, and I'm glad we stayed small. For a voice-driven game like Consume Me, a small team keeps that work coherent, personal, and emotionally unwell. And here's the catch. A small team doesn't eliminate the work. It just compresses the work. So for most of development, our core team was just me and AP. And later, we brought on a few more collaborators part-time. Unfortunately, we never had the invisible roles covered full-time. No producer, no QA, no marketing, no operations, which means the game didn't just have to get made. Someone also had to do all the boring stuff, like answering emails, contacting our accountant, paying a lawyer to look over agreements. And without this stuff, the game could never actually get finished. And here's the truth. The project only worked because AP has terrifying discipline. He showed up every single day, even when I didn't want to. And believe me, there were a lot of days when I didn't want to. AP was basically the engine, and on a tiny team, the most disciplined person becomes the programmer, the designer, the writer, and then, against his will, the producer. And that's too much for one person who's getting paid less than 7 figures. So yeah, staying small saved money, yet it cost time, burnout, and stability. And that taught me something crucial. What we did was not a strategy. It was a miracle. I know some people who say finishing any video game is a miracle, and in our case, our multi-award-winning video game was practically an accident. Lesson number 4. We hired Kelly as our background artist. And I'll be honest, I was intimidated at first. I was like, oh no, Kelly's gonna notice that I don't know what I'm doing. AP already knew that. I didn't need 2 people to know that. In all of my prior projects, I was the only artist. I didn't know how to share my role without losing my identity or potentially our friendship, so I felt insecure. Then, it turned out to be the best decision I made. Working with someone great does not dilute your vision. It sharpens it. It made the game better, and it made me better. So my takeaway is, put your ego aside and hire someone who makes you feel threatened. Not like actually threatened, like don't hire someone just because they have a knife. You know what I mean. Like, please be serious. Okay, lesson number 5, the biggest one. I need a producer. Not because I'm lazy, but because my brain needs structure. I used to think the hardest part of making a game was design or writing or programming, and that's not quite right. The hardest part is sitting at the desk and turning on your computer and choosing to do the least glamorous task in the universe. The same thing you did yesterday, all day today. And the hardest part isn't creativity, it's consistency. I love AP. He's the reason Consume Me exists on Steam and not in a folder on my laptop labeled Final version 2, real this time. But AP is not the right person to make me do consistent work because he's already doing 4 jobs. And unlike the character based on myself in Consume Me, I leave many of my to-do lists unchecked. Not because I'm lazy, it's because I look at my to-do list and I consider that eternally delicious question, what if I too didn't? So for the next game, I want structure that exists on purpose, not structure that happens because we've already spent the majority of our 20s working on the same project and that we're terrified that we'll run out of money because we launch the game, before we launch the game, you know. I need someone who will look me in the eyes and say, Jenny, what did you get done today? What are you doing tomorrow? Also, stop looking at social media. It's like 80% bots and liars on there. Honestly, I need someone like my ballet teacher, because she can really scare the shit out of me, and it's extremely productive. If Rockstar had hired her 10 years ago, I think GTA 6 would have beaten Claire Obscura Expedition 33 at the Game Awards. So what's next? On a whim that I still don't fully understand, 139 days ago, I started posting one TikTok a day until Consumi sells 1 million copies. So today is day 139 of posting every day until Consumi sells 1 million copies. Aside from that, I've started my next project recently, and I don't quite have the basis for a mega viral GIF yet, though the concept is real. My next game is about adults learning ballet. And before you get the wrong idea, it's not a graceful fantasy, it's the opposite. Because ballet is a performance art that is secretly about precision, shame, and suffering. I don't have all the answers yet. I have, however, identified several of the questions. If Consume Me was about feeling stupid, fat, and ugly in high school, I think the story ahead is what happens when that feeling doesn't go away. It just gets more expensive. So, yeah, it's about discipline, it's about performance, it's about wanting something you might not be built for and doing it anyway. Also, it's gonna be really, really funny, so just think like Dark Souls, but with better posture. And here's my last slide. Before anyone feels bad for me because I have to fly back to New York City and into my grandmother's tiny, moldy, unventilated apartment, please don't. Plot twist, that apartment is seconds away from Central Park West. It has a 100 walk score, and you couldn't beat that location if you tried. As for my career, I have options. Of course, I am always open to better ones. So if you want to fund the story ahead, yes, that's my Venmo up there. $3.2 million should cover it. I promise I won't take the money, buy a yacht, and sail away, never to be seen again. I suppose if you don't trust me, you can just come talk to me after this. I promise I'm frugal, I've shipped an award-winning video game, and I will do it again. Thank you.
So good. Oh, that was awesome. Before I leave you for now, I want to recognize ARC Raiders. ARC Raiders has been getting a lot of playtime and a lot of discussion around the Gearbox Studios, and there are many reasons for that. Engaging design mechanics, solid gameplay fundamentals, outstanding audio, and excellent technical execution, all contributing to why ARC Raiders has earned 6 nominations at this year's D.I.C.E Awards, including Game of the Year. The design director for ARC Raiders is Virgil Watkins, and he joins us here today to talk about his experience in creating meaningful moments that, that we experience with these live multiplayer moments. I want to see what he has to say, and I know you do too. So please join me to enthusiastically welcome to the D.I.C.E stage Virgil Watkins.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here to witness my public battle with imposter syndrome. Now, if you'll let me, I'll tell you a story about letting players tell stories. Often, the most memorable or impactful moments in games aren't those that the developers have authored. Rather, they are the moments that players create with each other while having a shared experience. Social interaction in games has a wide range, and it is often influenced by the context in which it occurs. In a competitive shooter, it might be your team giving you intel and cheering you on after a clutch moment. In a creative builder, it might be coming together to build a cozy home before setting off to explore a new place. Or in a PvP survival game, it might be springing an ambush to take hostages while you rifle through their belongings in search of beans. Players will naturally interact and create shared experiences. And in a game like Arc Raiders, it is the place for us as developers to create the conditions for those players to have those interactions. If you provide the tools and context and let them loose, players will surprise you with a lot of creative expression. This creative expression will manifest in ways that you didn't intend, in ways that are frustrating, and often in ways that can be hilarious. The inherent unpredictability of social play and the presence of other human beings is what makes these moments so impactful. We can never know what a player will do, and that is the beauty of it. The challenge for us is to embrace that, which shifts our responsibility from being the author of every moment to creating space for those moments. Creating that space requires setting a stage and providing a toolbox, which in turn requires a certain philosophy, a set of creative values that prioritize novelty, choice, and a willingness to embrace the unexpected. This mindset is what influences our development process, and it is what has led us to some of the core drivers behind Arc Raiders. We owe a lot of what has made Arc Raiders compelling to our ambition around fostering exploration and taking leaps on features that aren't guaranteed to pay off, or in some cases probably shouldn't have worked at all. Recently, a colleague said something that I think actually summed it up quite well. Sometimes we've been almost too stupid to say no to an idea and just go for it anyway. Upon further reflection, that's probably true, and in a few cases, the results have been predictably mixed. But that hasn't stopped us from asking, what if? So, some examples. What if our enemies could fly using physics? What if you could blast off their parts and they'd have to adapt? What if you could stand on them and ride around? Or, what if we taught giant robots how to walk, or leap, or chase you just about anywhere? Or what if we let players speak to each other? What if we let them change their voices? Or what if we let those same players climb anything? What if we let them jump and slide and dive all over the place? There is an inherent amount of chaos and unpredictability in utilizing these types of systems, but it also leaves the most room for the unexpected. One of the core design pillars on the project is that of choice and agency, which essentially means that whenever we possibly can, players are afforded choices within a given situation and the agency to act, or at a minimum, understand what occurred and how to adapt to or avoid it in the future. We try not to prescribe to our players how they are supposed to play, especially when it comes to their interactions with other players. I may get quickly corrected here, but I believe that at present, there is nothing in the game that directly asks you to fight other players. As is a decision that players make for themselves in the moment based on their own wants or needs. We may shape the situations or challenges in which players find themselves, be it the layout of a level or the composition of the enemies or even just the weather. But then we ideally want to get out of their way when it comes to how players want to approach those situations. It is important that we give players various means to engage, disengage, and most critically, communicate. With these tools, we give players the means to interact with Arc, the environment, and each other in predictable ways. It is then with their own creativity that they can then choose how to interact so that they can then ask their own what-if questions. By focusing on systems that allow for unpredictable outcomes, whether it's a physics-based enemy or a tool like proximity voice, we are intentionally creating space that tries to honor the player's freedom. We want to provide a platform for emergent narrative, acknowledging that the most powerful stories are the ones that players tell themselves or create for one another. So, how did we realize some of these ambitions? Well, our enemies do fly using physics, and you can blast off their parts while they try their best to recover. And sometimes they succeed, and sometimes they smash into a wall, or each other, or you. And we did teach giant robots how to walk, and leap, and chase you just about anywhere. And sometimes they trip on a rock and fall over, and sometimes their legs get stuck in a closing door, and sometimes they flip over and explode. And we do allow players to speak to each other. We let them be themselves or portray the raider that they wish to be, whether it's the trash-talking PvPer or the guy just trying to sell some fruit in Buried City to a passerby. And we let players climb just about anything and jump and slide and dive. So of course they phase through doors and get out of bounds, or they launch themselves into the stratosphere, or fall through the world into a post-process-induced Technicolor nightmare. We embraced the chaos and unpredictability. We gave it room to breathe, and thankfully, we got something wonderful in return, a lot of genuine surprise. Of course, this extended way beyond what we ourselves anticipated. A few million players will rack up more playtime and try wackier things in a day than we could ever. Things like watching an entire server come together to take down the queen with nothing but hammers. Or an extraction concierge ensuring that raiders have a pleasant and safe return to Speranza. Or a faction war instigated, in part, by a talking peanut. None of these things would have been on our bingo card, and now they're intrinsic to the history of the game. But these types of moments, and many more, gave us a great deal of insight into what players were having fun with, and lent inspiration into where we would take things next. In nearly all of these cases, there is one constant that underpins the entire experience: human interaction. Whether it's a tenuous alliance or a sudden betrayal, whether it's a deadly ambush or a heroic intervention, or just a really weird guy you met while you were looking for rubber ducks. In any case, you've usually got a new story to tell. No one in these situations needed to do what they did. They just followed their own motivations. We provide the setting, the stakes, maybe some pressure, but in the end, players will still make the choice. So what do we then do with all of these moments? Generally, we see where we can try to take things further. Players are having fun with a playable flute. How about an entire ensemble? And Buried City does have a lot of pianos. Extreme weather conditions seem to be pretty exciting. So what if you could get hit by lightning or freeze to death? And players are tending to find ARC drones a little charming and terrifying. So how about a ball that can hop and explode? Wonder if the drone should be able to open doors also. While there are critical areas of the game that deserve care and attention, such as progression, looting, and crafting, they exist to support what we find most compelling: fun, emergent, and surprising interactions between players within the context we've provided. And so, curiosity, a willingness to try new things, and trust in our team are core to our way of working. We strive to allow people to champion what they believe is best for the overall experience. Things like our ping system, proximity voice, the ARC drones themselves. Much of the world simply wouldn't exist if it weren't for people asking questions and being empowered to answer them, in cases even down to a single individual. Asking ourselves ambitious questions is not inherent to just ARC Raiders, but to Embark as a whole. What if you could destroy walls? What if you could destroy everything? What if it was a game show? What if we turned everything up to 11? What if? We have been extremely fortunate to have the time and space to build ARC Raiders, and equally fortunate to see players enjoy it at a scale we never predicted. We continue to be surprised and delighted by the experiences shared by our players. And so, what if we provide even more tools and challenges and choices to keep players creating stories, both for us and for each other? Thank you.